Gino at the 2011 NAMM show with Joel Davel, percussionist, and he also works with Buchla, and he's going to tell us about the Lightning III. He's actually been playing the Lightning for how many years now? Like 15 years, right?
Something like 15 years, yeah.
And among other instruments, including the marimba lumina.
Yeah.
And what else?
Marimba lumina has become a primary instrument of mine. Anything I can get my hands on that we've designed at Buchla.
Well, you got your hands on the Lightning III. Why don't you tell us how it works?
Okay, so this is Lightning III. It's essentially very much like Lightning II. It does have a three-dimensional thing added. I will explain Lightning in general, and then I'll show you some of the new aspects. So Lightning, as you might know, has the ability to track these wands in space. In this case, whoops, I have to turn them on.
You play.
I can use them to play drums in space or to play other sounds. Typically use them the way people use theremins, that is to assign maybe one hand to, or one XY position to pitch and another to volume. It's a very typical thing. Of course, you have two hands, so you can do that independently. And you can also play drums with what we just did. So if there's an optics over there that map this space, so if I play with the green on the right and the left, the red on the left, that I can play those two notes, or I can map it to several other sounds. I can map it to scales, play piano, or I can map it to, say, marimba. And, you know, play things that simply map the area from in the X space to a scale, and using foot pedals and things like that, enable and disable different MIDI channels, and just build a little independent virtual orchestra. But I can also hit in any direction, X, Y, little baby sounds, or simply play very typical, and emulate drums and things like that.
So your parts are these two wands here.
Yes.
And then you have this. This is the brain right here.
That is the brain right there.
Okay.
And
what's in the brain?
In the brain is a CPU that's interpreting the XY information that's coming off of the receiver, and turning it into usable information. And also, it has a language to it. For instance, here, if I make it weather. Lightning, of course, I can go in here and I can edit it and decide how the patches work. For instance, this is one of the powerful things about Lightning that makes it more than a toy, is that you actually have language that interprets what you're doing and turns it into something useful before it gets to the computer, if you're using an external computer. In this case, this is a button push. It plays a tuning table on channel 1 with the right hand in absolute mode, and then when I lift up the button, it sets it to 0. There are other patches in here with, these are basically MIDI commands. These are MIDI controllers. Brightness, which is controller, I believe, 77 release.
So you're basically setting up performance patches that you can go out and work with and just step through them using a MIDI foot pedal.
Exactly. I just step through them usually with the foot pedals, but I use this as a language to set up performance patches, or almost like virtual instruments. By itself, it does nothing, it makes no sound, but once you set up these performance variables, you can do a lot.
So you have the two wands, you have the brain, and then you have the receiver over there.
Right, exactly. So...
And this has sounds built in.
This has sounds built in. The sounds I've played with so far are all built in.
Can you import your own sounds?
Yeah, you can absolutely program your own sounds. I could jump to, not only can you program your own sounds, you can program your own scales. Here's something that uses its own scale. I have another variable. Lightning II only had XY, but Lightning III has a Z-axis, so how close you are to the controller. As I move further and closer away,
it gets more filtered.
It's more filtered. So it just adds, I already had volume and pitch this direction. And I just added a little bit more.
What's the distance you can get away from that?
The distance, actually, you have to program in. Maybe I haven't set it appropriately, but it depends on how you like to play it. If you want to play it a little closer, you can set the distance variable to be closer or further away. So, but in terms of playing your own sound, say, you can always go. This particular patch uses. I'm just using some native instruments. Loops and whatnot. So I use the loops. Well, I can play it like a drum. Get those going. But I also use this one. I believe I start up loops if I hit the button up here. Instruments you might have already built up. And then
so let's have a closer look at the wands themselves.
Yeah.
So explain what's going on here.
So this, like the light that's blinking here, you can see actually the two lights are blinking at a different rate. That's because they're putting on infrared light. This is just demonstrating that they're on. But at the tips, there's an infrared LED that's transmitting different frequencies to that receiver, and it is therefore receiving it. You notice if they're in the same zone, they light up the same area. As I move them apart, they track like that. So that's simply what's happening. It's just putting out infrared light like your remote on a television.
Right on. Thank you very much.
Yeah.